Leaders of the European Union are holding emergency talks in Brussels, seeking to show their continued support for Ukraine and aiming to endorse measures to boost defence spending. The meeting follows Washington's suspension of military aid and intelligence to Kyiv, raising questions about how much the bloc can rely on US support in the future. It remains unclear if a final text on Ukraine will be endorsed by the EU, and that's due to a veto threat from Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, who has maintained friendly ties with the Kremlin. However, majority of the EU leaders have remained steadfast in their support for Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, as well as Kyiv.
Today, Volodymyr, thank you for coming. It's a very important moment to show that we stand by Ukraine for as long as it takes.
This is something that we have been asking for a long time, that the European Union, that Europe is capable of standing up on its own 2 feet. That's why we've been saying we need to scale up, we need to be prepared, we need to produce, and we need to protect.
Well, we'll get more now from Will Denselow. He is reporting live to us from Brussels, as well as Ross Cullen reporting from Kyiv. Will, if we could just start with you first on the latest that's coming out from this emergency summit.
Yeah, Jill, well, if we cast our minds back a few days ago to the Oval Office and that meeting between Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky and Donald Trump, the US president, it was in the same room J.D. Vance, the US vice president, who accused Ukraine's leader of not showing enough gratitude. Well, here in Brussels a little while ago, there was no danger of a repeat of that. I think I must have counted around 4 times that Volodymyr Zelensky, in the space of about 90 seconds, thanked European leaders for their ongoing support for Kyiv. Now, a roundtable discussion has just gotten underway, but we've heard from a number of European leaders, including Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. She said that this is a watershed moment, both when it comes to providing Ukraine with short-term support and long-term security guarantees. Also on the docket is European wider security. The message from leaders here is that the 2 issues, Ukraine security, wider European security, are absolutely interwoven. Leaders will be discussing this roughly $850 billion rearm Europe plan presented this week by the European Commission. And we've heard from Roberta Metsola. She says, quote, "It's about damn time."
Now, Ross, if we could bring you in here, there is another issue, isn't it? France says it will share intelligence with Kyiv after the US said that it's going to be pausing its intel with Kyiv. But is it going to be enough?
Yeah, Jill, that's right. The announcement from the French Defence Minister Sébastien Lecornu that France will indeed help Ukraine in terms of intelligence for the armed forces here. That's coming after the suspension of intelligence sharing from the United States. But it's an example of this more muscular approach from France now, really trying to be in the vanguard of European countries when it comes to support for Ukraine. Emmanuel Macron has been saying for more than a year that Europe has to consider boots on the ground in terms of this peacekeeping force to be agreed inside Ukraine if a peace deal is to be achieved. And also, if we cast a look back at his speech to the nation, the address that Emmanuel Macron gave just on Wednesday evening, when he said that Russian aggression knows no bounds, saying that historic events are shaking the world order. Very strong words from Emmanuel Macron. And now we've got this step up in support in terms of intelligence sharing from the French Defence Ministry.
And Will, the EU still divided on how much to pledge to Ukraine. Take us through what are still some of the sticking points.
Well, when it comes to long-term security, things like a potential peacekeeping force, that remains very much up in the air. There are plenty of divisions on that subject. But when it comes to short-term tangible actions, well, The European High Representative Kaja Kallas has already suggested sending Ukraine imminently 1.5 million rounds of ammunition that could make a very quick difference for Kyiv. However, while there is large spread unity on that issue, Hungary is a holdout. The message from Viktor Orban, the country's prime minister, is that he believes that further military support for Kyiv would be detrimental to the United States' efforts to try and find a peace plan. We've heard from Kaja Kallas, who says that she is very much hoping for unity out of this summit, but says that they will explore the possibility of a so-called coalition of the willing if some member states aren't willing to play ball. Ultimately, she says everyone is in agreement that they want a lasting peace for Ukraine, but she says it's imperative that that peace isn't to the detriment of the Ukrainian people.
Now, there are also reports of US President Trump reportedly holding secret talks with the political opponents of Mr. Zelensky. Ross, tell us what was discussed there.
Yeah, that's right. The Trump administration has made no secret of the fact that it is dissatisfied with the political positioning of the Ukrainian president, despite the fact that he was democratically elected in 2019. They have railed against the fact that there have been no elections for the presidency in Ukraine since 2019. Donald Trump saying that Ukrainian leader Zelensky is akin to a dictator for cancelling elections. Well, Ukraine cannot hold elections right now. It would be unconstitutional to do so. You cannot hold elections when martial law is in place, and it has been in place here since the start of the full-scale invasion in 2022. Volodymyr Zelensky has said, though, that he would like to hold elections as soon as it is viable to do so. He would not like to be a leader who is in power for a very long time. That was a nod to Russian President Vladimir Putin, who has been president or prime minister of Russia since the start of the century. Now, in terms of these talks, reportedly, the US administration has been speaking to Petro Poroshenko and Yulia Tymoshenko. Now, Mr. Poroshenko was the immediate predecessor to Volodymyr Zelensky in the presidency from 2014 to 2019, and Ms. Tymoshenko has twice been prime minister of Ukraine. They are both members of the opposition and would be likely to run against Mr. Zelensky if he were to run for re-election, if elections were to be held. And just to have a look at the most recent opinion polls as well, President Trump in previous weeks has falsely said that Volodymyr Zelensky has a rating of around 4%. It's more often between 40 and 50%. And in fact, coming up behind him, the second most popular leader in Ukraine is not Mr. Poroshenko or Ms. Tymoshenko, but is in fact Valery Zaluzhny, who's the former Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces and is currently the ambassador of Ukraine to the United Kingdom. He has never stated any presidential ambition, but he does remain very popular in Ukraine for the position he had leading the armed forces in the immediate aftermath of the start of the full-scale invasion.
Ross, Will, thank you so much. I've been speaking there with Will Denselow in Brussels and Ross Cullen in Kyiv.